recognizing Russia's unilateral aggression towards Ukraine as the European Union does. Macron describes the global food crisis as one of Russia's weapon of war during a visit to Cameroon on Tuesday. This was last week, dismissing suggestion Western sanctions were to blame. Cameroon, like many developing countries, is grappling with sharp increase in prices for oil, fertilizers, and foodstuffs. Severe fuel shortages hit the capital, Yaoundé, I should say, last week, leading to long queue at petrol stations. French President Emmanuel Macron declared his country would support Africa's need for security as he began a three-country tour marked by France's military revamp in the jihadist torn Sahel. So, um, okay, let's take a quick listen to what Macron had to say.
French President Emmanuel Macron Tuesday denounced the hypocrisy expressed notably on African continent for not clearly recognizing Russia's unilateral aggression towards Ukraine as the European Union does. Macron described the global food crisis as one of Russia's weapon of war during a visit to Cameroon on Tuesday, dismissing suggestions Western sanctions were to blame. The choice that has been made by the Europeans, firstly, is in no way to participate in this war, but to recognize it and to name it. I've seen too much hypocrisy, particularly on the African continent, and I'm saying this very calmly, with some not calling it a war when it is one, and saying they don't know who started it because they are diplomatic pressures. Cameroon, like many developing countries, is grappling with a sharp increase in price for oil, fertilizer, and foodstuff.
I mean, I just want to, just stop it there. Where do I even begin? And talking about the hypocrisy across the continent of Africa, some countries not calling it a war because that's what it is. Not refusing to label it a war. And let's not be fooled here, okay? There's a reason why President Macron is using those words. The fact that many countries, many African countries, are refusing to recognize Russia's invasion of Ukraine as a war. Now, when you use the word war, that actually changes the scope of things, changes how whatever is the situation happening right now in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, is looked at and is described. Okay. So, for instance, if you say conflict, it doesn't really hold, it doesn't have the same gravitas as war. If you say unrest, it doesn't. The moment you say war, it changes the whole dynamic of the situation. And for him, for the president of France, a very powerful figure in the international system. When I say international system simply means the political body, the global political body. Okay, and who's at the top, whether you're going to say the U.S. or China, you know, European Union, you name it. Okay, and for him to be on an African soil with the president of Cameroon, Paul Biya, and to utter such nonsense, and I will call it nonsense, and I hold no grudges for saying so. And you can also let me know if you agree or disagree with my view on this particular subject. If you agree, you can call 0203-735-8820. If you disagree, 0203-286-0185, or you want to contribute or say something different, you're welcome to do so. 0778-793-9958. Right? Now back to Macron, and this is why hypocrisy. The word he used, hypocrisy, is actually, I can actually use that to describe the West. To for somebody in Africa to look at situation happening across Europe, and then the fact that a lot of countries have decided to refrain from supporting the ideology of the West, Mr. Macron sees it fit to stand in front of the press and publicly denounce or to call out African leaders, calling them or labeling them as hypocrites. It's nonsense. Absolutely nonsense. What has the war with between Russia and Ukraine got to do with Africa? Is Africa part of NATO? Any African country part of NATO? So, what difference would it make for African countries to get involved with NATO's business? I don't know. I mean, look, I'm just, of course, I'm trying to oversimplify this. All right. I'm trying to make it as simplistic as possible. It has African leaders have no business on what's happening in Europe. It should be the business of NATO, even though Ukraine not a member of NATO. So actually, if you look at it, it should be the business of the European Union or leaders in Europe. So just look at this, right? On one hand, Africa, when I say Africa, I'm not, please just bear with me. I know some people are some people will be sitting at home thinking, why does he keep saying Africa like Africa is a country? I do know Africa is a continent, right? So this I'm talking about the whole region, and he made it as well, Mr. Macron. He's probably sitting at home. I mean, there are people listening thinking that Africa is not a country. And so it's not. I agree with you, but just bear with me. When I was here, I'm including every African country here as we speak, right? Mr. Macron. So we are made to believe, and this is the narrative of the African story as purported by um, Europeans, or should I say the West. When it came to the pandemic, the fear was there's going to be a lot of dead bodies floating across the continent due to the pandemic because we had a lot of inadequate medical facilities to actually deal with this pandemic. As the pandemic tore through Europe and other countries, Africa should embrace itself or herself for what was to come. Thankfully, that didn't happen. Why that didn't happen, I don't know. Maybe it's because there's a lot of should I say, Africa is a youthful has a youthful population, so they were able to the body were able to fight it, as opposed to a lot of the aging population across Europe. It's up to you. Africa's poor infrastructure does not help, in terms of productivity, and therefore Africa struggles when it comes to GDP. When you look at adverts on TV, a lot of the times you see these NGOs asking for people to donate to help young kids in Africa with flies on their noses and you name it. The former British Prime Minister David Cameron, notably, made a statement saying that Nigeria is fantastically corrupt. So you name it, everything that seems to be negative, right? or has a negative connotation has been thrown to Africa. It has been. So why now? Why all of a sudden the president of France thinks that is hypocritical for Africans, African countries, African leaders to refrain from criticizing Russia? I mean, it won't make any difference, would it? It wouldn't. I mean, Europeans, these are the superpowers. We call them superpowers. If if superpowers, so they claim to be, and they are. Let's not um, kid ourselves here. They are, because these are the ones that are regime changes. These are the ones that can go into a country and just remove whoever they don't like. If their words and their military capabilities are unable to bring a change or to put an end to the war in Ukraine or Russia's invasion of Ukraine, how on earth does he expect African countries, with some countries' GDP less than $1,000 or £1,000, how it just baffles me. And again, this just proves the arrogance of these leaders. It just goes to show, when in the aftermath of 9/11, when George Bush, when the US, the president of the United States, George Bush, said, if you're not with us, then you are against us. Literally commanding every country to support America's war on terror. And to me, I see the same position here, because I don't understand why Mr. Macron would think the fact that some countries have objected to criticizing Russia's invasion of Ukraine as a way of not supporting the West. What has that got to do with the price of fish? And I'm actually, for once, we have to applaud a lot of their countries for standing their ground, African countries for standing their ground and vehemently refusing to criticize Russia. Because the game is up. The game is up. And when I say the game, it's come to light. And right about now, I mean, no matter how much we do tend to criticize African leaders, all right, on this particular occasion, I have to applaud them. The game is up. The game is up. Here we are, a lot of the African countries, and when we talk about the impact of the Ukraine, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it has significant impact on Africa. It does. It really does, especially in the agriculture sector. It really does, because a lot of the fertilizers do come from Russia, and obviously a lot of the grains and the cooking oil and whatnot do come from, I think, both Russia and Ukraine. So it will have an impact. But let's not forget that Ukraine was propped up by the West, by NATO. When George W. Bush decided to invade Afghanistan and invade Iraq, not just the US and its allies. I didn't hear any Western powers condemning African leaders or labeling them as hypocrites, or their position being that of a hypocritical stance. So why now? Why now? The game is up. The game is up. It's high time that a lot of our leaders stick to stuck to their guns, so to speak, and not be, just followers. You cannot, because right now, we live in a global society, a global village, and your friend today could be your enemy tomorrow. Your enemy today could be your friend tomorrow, and you do not have to support. You don't have to. If you condemn it, you condemn it. If you disagree, you disagree. And this is what I do not like, and this is what I think. Um, for centuries, that the West always dictates how African leaders ought to run their countries or to act. And I totally disagree with that position. I totally disagree. I'll come back to that very, very soon. Let's look at what the US is also trying to do here. The US announced last week that its Secretary of State Anthony Blinken would travel to South Africa, the DRC, and Rwanda between the 7th and 11th of August. This trip was notified just 2 days after Blinken's Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, completed his African tour in 4 countries. Lavrov went to Egypt, Congo, Uganda, and Ethiopia. It stands as an additional sign of the battle of influence raging between the Western and Russian sides amid the war in Ukraine and food crisis. In the very same week, the US also said another top diplomat, President Biden's ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas Greenfield, would visit Ghana and Uganda on the 4th of August. So here we are. It's listen, and this is not coincidental, right? It's premeditated, and as the report just said, the influence, because this is what it boils down to. It's all about influence. And if you listen to my interview with Vicky Ford, the UK Minister for Africa, where in the latter part of the interview I asked her to do with China, the level at which China has invested in Africa. Does this limit the UK's influence across the continent of Africa? And then, of course, she gave her answers. But at the end of the day, it's all about influencing. Who's going to have the greatest influence, in Africa? And Russia have already made their move. They sent their ambassador there. He was there sometime last week, and off the back of that, Mr. Macron too was in Cameroon, and then now the US are also going there. What does this tell you? What does it tell us? Or should I? Let me throw that question to you. Actually, what does this tell you? I'll be speaking to Julius Belito very, very soon, and we'll be looking at this particular subject. Okay, we'll be looking at this particular topic because it is important. It's very, very important. And then when we look at Ghana, in a statement, the Minister for Communications and Digitalization, Mrs. Ursula Owusu, disclosed that a self-service SIM registration app will be ready for commercial launch on Tuesday. So this is off the back of the exercise of people registering the SIM cards, right? Using the Ghana card, the identity card. That this is one of the government's big policy, the Ghana ID card. So what they're trying to do is to be able to collect data, and also this is one of the vice president's initiative, the digitalization, and the exercise where people there was a time limit to when people can register their SIM card. I think it has been extended, but what they're trying to do is also create an app where people can use the app to register the SIM card. Now, using the app will cost the Ghanaian 5 cities to be able to use that. So they're being charged. There's a 5 cities surcharge to register your SIM on mobile app. And with that, um, this has received a lot of criticism. Former member of parliament for Kumbungu, Ras Mubarak, says that it will be illegal for Ghanaians to be surcharged for registering their SIM cards without parliamentary approval. In a statement he issued under the group name concerned mobile network subscribers and copied to the newspaper, announced an extension. What does it say? As the ministry, rather, the ministry announced an extension of the deadline for registering of SIM cards. Mr. Ras Mubarak said that the surcharge announced by Mrs. Esla Owusu would be illegal because a minister has no authority to impose fees or surcharge or charge without parliamentary approval. Then he goes on to say that, look, at this current climate, with the high cost of living, inflation, and people are being charged to simply register their SIM card. We'll look at that more in more depth when we come back from the break. And of course, now we'll be taking your phone calls. This is GN Radio Morning Breakfast Show with myself, Jones. We'll be back right after this. welcome back to the show. Let me remind you that we're streaming live on Facebook and also on YouTube. Plus, I invite you to call in, okay? Let's hear from you. The numbers you need are 0203-735-8820 or 0203-286-0185. Alternatively, you can call 0778 793-9958. These are the numbers that you need to call. Okay. Call. Let's have a discussion. Let's have a dialogue. Because when it comes to stories like these, sometimes it just winds me up. It really, really does. But let's have a discussion. All right, cool. Alternatively, if you want to send a message on our social media page, you can do so. All right, you can do so, and I will respond to your messages. And whilst you're there, make sure you share. Make sure you share. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. All right, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. Let's have a discussion. All right. We are streaming live on Facebook, as I did mention. Also on Tunein. So there's no excuse, really. There's no excuse not to listen to us. You have no excuse not to listen to us. We've got you covered on all angles. Get involved. Let's have a discussion. Let's talk. And the theme of the question that will be dominating our today's program is President Macron calls African leaders hypocrites for not recognizing Russia's unilateral aggression towards Ukraine, as the European Union does. Has he got a point? And of course, if you just tune in and you missed my monologue, then I will return to that because I clearly said no. He hasn't got no point. He has no right to be questioning, to even ask such, to make such ridiculous statement, to call African leaders hypocrites. Of course, this was off the back of his trip to Cameroon. Let's listen to this again, all right? Let's listen to the reports again. And then when we come back, we continue with our discussion.
French President Emmanuel Macron Tuesday denounced the hypocrisy expressed notably on the African continent for not clearly recognizing Russia's unilateral aggression towards Ukraine as the European Union does. Macron described the global food crisis as one of Russia's weapons of war during a visit to Cameroon on Tuesday, dismissing suggestions Western sanctions were to blame. The choice that has been made by the Europeans, firstly, is in no way to participate in this war, but to recognize it and to name it. I've seen too much hypocrisy, particularly on the African continent, and I'm saying this very calmly, with some not calling it a war when it is one, and saying they don't know who started it because they are diplomatic pressures.
Okay, so that was the French President Emmanuel Macron calling out the hypocrisy of African leaders for saying that they're not going to call the war that's happening in Ukraine, Russia's aggression towards Ukraine. They're not going to call it as war, abstaining from such usage of such words and rather just stay in the corner. And again, so where do I even begin? Because I mean, we've had this discussion before, and I don't want to go back. The reason for Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and of course, there is security issues, and whether it's right or wrong, I think it's subjective. It depends on where you are. If you're Russia and you can see that the EU, sorry, not the EU, NATO, NATO looking for Ukraine to join its membership, and seeing that NATO is approaching on your territory, of course, you will take whatever measures you need to protect your territory. And this is the decision, the position of Russia, right? And of course, we live in a democracy world. Well, so we've been told to made to believe. But let's just say for once we do, right? Um, and it is Ukraine's democratic right to also join NATO if it wants to. But let's not kid ourselves. Let's not kid ourselves. This is just another point of Americans' expansionism, right? America is looking to expand its territories, okay, trying to corner Russia. And of course, Russia will retaliate. And the hypocrisy about the West, when Libya was invaded, with France playing a key role in this invasion in Libya. How many countries, how many of the superpowers came out to speak against the invasion of Libya? And see, so it's really difficult for me to even find any substantive argument on what Mr. Macron is doing. If this is not just based purely on security, the fact that, yes, it is a superpower and it can just speak anyhow. Absolutely ridiculous to make such a statement. But let me hear your take. Is he right in what he said? You can call 0203 735 8820, 0203 286 0185. Alternatively, you can send a text message or call 0778 793 9958. Now, I did say that we'll be joined by Julius Belito to help us discuss this particular story. And the question that I've posed out there, basically just quoting what French president said, Emmanuel Macron. President Macron calls African leaders hypocrites for not recognizing Russia's unilateral aggression towards Ukraine, as the European Union does. Has he got a point? Is what I'm asking. And the funny thing, the interesting thing is the US have also sending its ambassadors to Africa off the back of Russia's ambassador going to Africa. So the bone of contention here is about influence. Russia has made the journey. France was there last week, and now the US. And the US will also visit Ghana and Uganda. Julius, thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Has President Macron got a point, sir?
Um, our wonderful continent of Africa has always been, like the battleground for superpowers. They want to get hold of Africa and be the ones in control. All these are the countries that you have just mentioned. Of course, Jonas, if you look into the kind of current or today's world scramble for Africa is still happening again. You remember historically Africa being divided between the Soviet Union as communist countries, and then there was the rest of Africa, which was seen by the Western countries from the Western Hemisphere as democratic. So that split still goes on in a very subtle manner. We have seen, for example, for the rest of the world wanting to be in control in Africa, them setting up military bases in many countries in Africa, talk about US military bases, talk about Chinese military base, and it's all about they want to have their foot on the ground. I was with a media briefing, I think this week, with the head of Africa Command in the US. Is about to retire. And he was still talking about the way the US views Africa. Views their Russia in Africa right now. And of course, they are talking about these forces by Russian on the ground in Africa, which they seem to say they are not legit, they're not legitimate and all that. But when you come to what Macron is saying as well, talking about hypocrisy, one speaking, whether from Russia or US or France or even any other country in the Western Hemisphere, they're talking about from their standpoint. They're like, we are the guys you should be dealing with. Don't deal with the other ones.
Yeah.
This is the exact point. It's a battleground. And every country in the West, they want to be the ones that win. If you talk about the perception of, or even let's come locally. Haven't you seen Sunak, the current guy
Yes, Mr.
applying to
Sunak,
be the
yeah.
prime minister? He's now talking when he comes a very skin check on China. And you see, we aggravated Russia not long ago. We don't want to be again the ones to aggravate China. Because these battles about these countries, you can never win. They're superpowers, all of them. You know? So Africa, unfortunately, it is a battleground of all these interested parties, and they have to talk bad against each other. I mean, that's my viewpoint.
But I just want to say this just before you came on, Julius. I was actually just looking at. I mean, you've made, you've said the fact that these type of utterances is basically based on the fact that they are superpowers. And I was just thinking, I mean, if you look at the narrative from the West about Africa, has everything about it is just negative, right? And on the broader scale is negative. We had the former Prime Minister David Cameron labeling Nigeria as fantastically corrupt. Okay, you look on the news, everything about Africa is about charity, donate to a certain organization to help children. So basically, in a nutshell, we cannot handle our affairs. If you look at this, the level at which Africa borrows, okay, that narrative of not being able to handle our affairs, and where our if you combine the GDP of a lot of these countries, no wonder poverty is, very high in these developing countries. So with all of that, my point is, what difference would it actually make should African countries decide to join the European Union to criticize Russia's aggression towards Ukraine? I mean, is this not a matter of NATO, even though Ukraine is not part of NATO? Is this not the superpowers who are supposed to be able to put a stop to Russia's aggression towards Ukraine? What would it do? I'm just trying to look at it from the other side.
Yeah.
What would it actually do for African leaders to also denounce, or not denounce, denounce Russia's aggression towards Ukraine?
Yeah. Remember this. I always push a narrative that every election in any country in Africa, the Western countries, they want to control that in a different subtle manner at the back. And all this happening is because they like any country in Africa to be ruled, right? They're a very cool name, allies, right? And if you're not going to be a good ally, they all make effort. You either lose the election, and if you win, we have a nice, kind of subtle but brutal name, regime change. Yeah, we've seen it in Libya. Yeah, and also talk about even Equatorial Guinea. Who was behind the coup there? Wasn't it the son of Margaret Thatcher, former Prime Minister of Britain? So when you look into all these, you have to understand every country in the West want to have a foothold in Africa. Now, if you are not going to sing their song, sing your master's song. They call them masters because they colonized Africa. And if you're not going to sing their song, definitely then you are not good for their business. Now, when you look into the narrative of what is really wrong in Africa, it's all communication, is a narrative that gets pushed to brand Africa this way or that way. And they don't even have to do a regime change. Sometimes through communication, coups are conducted through communication, through our perception, through what we see. I mean, just like you, I get really tired of all these antiphons. There are these African children, they have to bring all these house flies flying around their faces, and they look so desperate, and save the children, do this, fine, and all that. But there was one I see, and actually, it made me ask so many questions. Is the campaign for save the donkeys in Africa? Which donkey in Africa complained for human rights, for their rights? I mean, and how can you save a donkey when it's just doing its normal chores in a day in Africa? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you have to make donation to save donkeys in Africa, to save kangaroo, whatever, and basically almost everything.
Yeah.
So it's like, Africa, you're not in control. Everything has to be done for you. But is that the truth? No, that's not the truth. Remember, Africa is the home of creativity since time immemorial. If you go to Egypt, you look at the pyramids, you just want to understand what kind of architecture was this, who was behind this a long time ago. Creativity and everything that is there. You go to Africa, you look about a lot of innovation globally are African-led by Africans on the ground. Yes, our leaders fail us in Africa, but that doesn't mean that Africa is not in control. If there was not this element of pushing by the West for the West to control Africa, then maybe Africa would just wake up one day, African leaders, and, oh, fine, actually, we got independence, we forgot. We are free, we can do whatever we want, and we can be prosperous. If this push is just stopped for once, maybe you can make these guys see clearer, And Jonas, I think when the Africa we are talking about today is the Africa, a whole chunk of Africans are youth. And when you talk about colonialism, that's history to them. So some of them in any country in Africa, they don't connect directly with it. Being the case, they are like the hangover, the anchor that is held because of colonialism is kind of held by the slightly older generation in Africa. And these youthful people, if you give them the chance, they can turn around Africa without this being pushed. We need to control you. African countries, Jonas, in West Africa, France doesn't want to lose hold. They still use CFAX. CFAX is a currency. In any country, ownership of currency is expression of sovereignty of that country.
Absolutely.
Total independence. Now, if your currency is going to be controlled by France up to date, all these countries, they try to introduce the echo, but the echo, no one is talking about it now. Gaddafi talked about Africa currency because you want to own these things, but Gaddafi is no longer with us because of the regime change. So I don't want to go back deep in history, but
no.
there's a lot of work to be done.
And I agree with you because earlier in my little monologue, in my rant, I did make mention of the fact that even when Libya was invaded, we didn't see any Western leaders condemning the illegal invasion of Libya because it was illegal. And France played a pivotal role in facilitating that invasion. But what does this say about the 25 African countries that have that abstained from a vote to condemn Russia's invasion in Ukraine?
100% is their right. You see, there are words of Nelson Mandela. He was challenged one time. And the question that was raised to Nelson Mandela that time was, you are seen as an icon of freedom in Africa. Globally, you represent freedom because everyone supports what you do, Mr. Mandela. But how are you able to be able to connect with Palestine? And Mandela gave a very valid answer. He said, some people think that their enemies must be our enemies. Some people think if you condemn someone, we have to condemn too. And Nelson Mandela said, listen to me very carefully. When I was fighting apartheid system in Africa, South Africa, Palestine helped me. So to me, they're not my enemies. They are my comrades. So that sticks up, that narrative, your enemies cannot be our enemies. It means at some point, somebody must have a sober mind. Because if actually someone was telling the Western country, hang on a minute, what do you want to do with Russia? Think about it. Why can't you just negotiate? instead of throwing those sanctions even in the first place. They would have, even they took time, so much time to think. They would have known the moment we do this to Russia, our oil will go up, our foodstuffs will go up. And if you ask citizens, they'll tell you, don't do it. We don't want to pay it.
All right, Julius, I just want us to listeners to hear this clip and we'll continue with our conversation. So, as I said, the US announced last week, Friday, a Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, will travel to South Africa, the DRC, and Rwanda between the 7th and 11th of August.
Good afternoon.
The U.S. announced on Friday its Secretary of State Anthony Blinken would travel to South Africa, the DRC, and Rwanda between the 7th and the 11th of August. This trip was notified just 2 days after Blinken's Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov completed his African tour in 4 countries. It stands as an additional sign of the battle of influence raging between the Western and Russian sides amid the war in Ukraine and a food crisis. On the very same week, the US also said another top diplomat, President Biden's ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas Greenfield, would head to Ghana and Uganda on August 4th. During his trip, Lavrov rejected accusations that Russia was exporting hunger and instead blamed the West for monopolizing commodity and supply flows during the pandemic, saying it worsened the situation for food imports. The Russian foreign minister also added that sanctions imposed to his country were exacerbating the situation. With these visits, Washington hopes to change the narrative. A tough bet, as many African nations have refused to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Okay. That report there was done by African News, and again, Julius, you did make mention of it, the fact that it looks as if this is the scramble for Africa or scramble for Africa 2.0 happening here, and you can actually see it. I mean, a lot of the times, when you read journals, you read articles, and you tend to find out the battle between these superpowers, but right now it's happening right in front of us. This just came after off the back of Russia's visit across the continent of Africa. And right now, Julius, because a lot of the times we look at it from the superpowers perspective. Let's try and look at it from the African perspective and try and flip it on its head. If you were one of these leaders right now and the superpowers are coming to try and sell themselves or to try and refute whatever claims have been made about them, to open the channels of trade and negotiations, what would you do, Julius?
Jonas, I come from Kenya, a country that has been a victim of being seen as an ally of the US, ally of the UK. And I tell you, when you talk about even terror attack, I think the worst attack by the Al Qaeda when it started, even before the September 11th happened in East Africa. There was a twin bombing in Tanzania's capital city, twin bombing in Kenya, Nairobi. And if you saw the devastation, the deaths, it was incredible. That was before September the 11th.
Yes.
And why that? Just because terrorists saw Kenya as an ally of these countries. Now, many times, as time has gone, you see, any times Al-Shabaab is, something is done to Al-Shabaab by the US, they can go to US. Kenya is nearer. They revenge on Kenya. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you remember Westgate, chaos and all that, it just speaks volume of what does being an ally mean. Again, it's important to have an ally to combat terror because terror is global. Coordination, international efforts, being together is very important. But there are consequences of this kind of political alignments. So, for example, if you talk about right now, if you're going to split Africa to countries that support a Russian action on Ukraine and countries that are not for that, actions, it just goes on and on, because immediately then globally, Jonas, you'll be shocked to find out China is a supporter of Russia.
Yeah.
And China is a darling in Africa because of the money it pours there to deliver development projects. It's such a complex mix that why it has not succeeded is because Africa is
Julius, if I
not in
may
the hands of a
interject,
few. Africa is dealing
Julius.
with all these different countries together.
Yeah, Julius,
So
if
it's
I may
tricky to
interject.
condemn one
I
and
don't think Julius
be
can hear
seen
me.
as a line to be drawn, straight, and they're like, oh, we saw you commenting, we saw you doing this. Have you stopped being our ally or whatever?
Can you hear me, Julius? Because I'm not sure whether you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, sure.
Can
Good,
you
good,
hear
good.
me?
No, because I was just going to say, I mean, look, the Cold War is over, and the ideological part of it. I don't know. Yes, it is over in the sense that we no longer have the Soviet Union, right? But is this whole ideological side part of the Cold War still lingering? Because you did make mention of the fact that China is a supporter of Russia and vice versa. And we see China's impact across the continent of Africa. And I remember to the point where during President Trump's tenure, that the ambassador to Ghana actually questioned the level at which China is investing across the continent and the type of deals that African countries are actually signing. So now we've seen Russia going over to the continent. Some countries, 25 African countries, have abstained from voting to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now we've seen the US, France on the other side also going on there. I mean, is this coming back to the forefront again, or is just purely based on as you're saying, align yourself, as allies, align yourself with one country or the other?
You see, if it was me given the chance to talk to African countries, I'll just advise them, stop fighting wars that are not your wars. Don't fight wars that are not your wars. The thing is, when we talk about why is the West and NATO keen to see that Russia is, to see that Russian neighbors become members of NATO. Why is that important to NATO? And you find out Russia feels threatened because what that represents, they can come and next door build nuclear weapons or nuclear plants, whatever. Empowering these countries close to Russia is like neutralizing it in a way. And Russia doesn't like that. It also, if you're like NATO, you say I'm an Angreza, you see me as an Angreza, and you come to my next door neighbor, and you want to build a military plant next to my neighbor, I will be very concerned because you can kill me. You're so close. You know what I mean? And therefore, when you look into that, Jonas, NATO war with Russia is not African war. So even countries in Africa, the best that can do, because globally we want peace. Globally we stand for we stand against expansionism, taking territories that don't belong to you as a country. We stand against that. We want countries to be sovereign nations, and no other country can come and take over another country. We stand against that, and we know that. But this war remains NATO versus Russia. Africa should be missing. They shouldn't even comment. Just leave them, let them fight their wars. Don't say anything about it. And no one will blame you. So when they abstain to vote, even, I like that because in a way they say we are out of this,
Yes.
we are out of this. The countries that comment and they say, yeah, Russia should not take over Ukraine on the basis that no country should take a territory that doesn't belong to them, this one I support too. But Africa, is about time we stop to fight wars that are not our wars.
Julius,
You know?
thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Julius Belito. Julius is a journalist, a broadcaster, and he has his show on Colorful Radio. Julius has his show on Colorful Radio dealing with global politics on weekends. So do make sure that you tune in. Let me hear your take. A few messages have come in, and I will read them out very, very soon. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll bring you other news as well. I did mention earlier on that it has been reported that a Nigerian man was killed in Italy. We'll bring you an update on that particular story. It's sad. It's very, very sad the way that some of our brothers and sisters are treated outside the continent of Africa. So we'll bring you that story as well. Plus, Senegalese votes to elect countries' deputies. Very, very important elections that took place over in Senegal. We'll also bring you news on, one of the richest men in Africa, Aliko Dangote. We'll bring you an update on his on money that he lost actually. Just in July, he lost huge sums of money. We'll bring you an update on that. Plus, we turn our attentions to Ghana, and the story dominating in Ghana right now is surcharging for SIM card registration. According to an MP, former MP, I should say, the fact that the government is issuing this policy is illegal as it did not seek parliamentary approval. Let's hear your take on this. We're taking a quick break. When we come back, we continue with our discussion.
Become a successful entrepreneur with Jackie and her professional team. Become a successful entrepreneur. Anase Base. Wami a team of professional teachers of economics, marketing. Nina omoyebi. So person will transform your life from a youth graduate and a school leaver. Na so person will ye entrepreneur. Mon contact base. Entrepreneur no che say obia ebia wa business. Ebia we che. But person will no in a professional way. To say Oprah Winfrey. Anaya papa Kwame Despite. Base Bitmama Sa Diano Abim. One year experts and coaching and a mentoring. And as one person will start to wow business base for bet show how I will be expanding with business and as existing customer base. Base provides support in business plans, step-by-step finance applications, and marketing strategies. Base or become a successful entrepreneur also provide entrepreneurship skills through vision and determination. Some more per free consultation for a base 073 99 867 417. I repeat 073 99 867 417. And also one email address info@becomeasuccess.co.uk. Website www.becomeasuccess.co.uk. Mokohwa mobetimi make bookings for an appointment. Base and I said become a successful entrepreneur. Let's turn your vision into a reality.
The world as we know it has changed, and so have the issues affecting our community.
COVID-19 and the geopolitical tensions have really made it abundantly clear that the African continent has to do more to be self-sufficient from an industrial capacity point of view.
Join me, Jones Awuah, on GN Breakfast Show as we look at issues affecting us here in the UK, with a close eye on trending stories across the world.
When we invest from the UK into infrastructure in African countries, that it is absolutely transparent.
With a focus on Ghana's social and political issues.
I mean, it's not about you thinking about, your money, the Sikadiba side. It's not what our authorities should be thinking about, or officials, but rather they should think about the nation.
The Breakfast Show with Jones Awuah.
Monday to Wednesday from 8 a.m. on GN Radio.
Welcome back to the program. This is GN Radio. Listening to me, Jones Awuah, the morning breakfast show. The time now it's coming up to 20 to 10. So soon we'll bring this show to an end. Let's pick our first call, and then I'll come back to reading your messages. Hello, good morning.
Morning, Jones. How are you?
Hello.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing, sir?
Not bad. Good morning. This is Kofi Ali.
Good morning, Kofi. What would you like to say?
Yeah, in fact, we'll be listening to the conversation, and it's very interesting one. Very, very interesting one. And the analysis has been going on and on and on. Yeah, you see, I heard when you were talking about the European Union and what European Union is doing, which is very clear. But when we are talking about Africa, like you rightly said yourself, everybody will be telling you it's a continent. A continent without an authority. Because there are so many states, each is an authority on its own. Whereas in the EU is clear, regardless of what the member states want, to come and stand up and say, this is my position. And therefore, all the 27, now they are going to 29, you can see them very active. The one that is active is the European Union Commission. They come out when there's oil issue, energy issues, they take a position. Whatever they want to do, you can respect it because it's a clear voice. This Africa thing we are busy talking about, no one is talking about what is the position of the African Union. Do you remember Macky Sall was in what they call it, NATO summit?
Uh-huh.
And the same Macky Sall was in Russia. He was there as the chairman of the African Union. Can you see? The man is elected to be the president of Senegal. He's still right now fighting to be the president of Senegal again after 2 terms. Because that's how the French people do their democracy anyway. Macron can do the same thing. However, there is a problem here. It means even the people on that continent don't recognize their own African Union. And then we say, okay, if you don't recognize the African Union, maybe because it's too far, Addis Ababa is too far. We are totally isolated from it. Let us create regional bodies, and we have our ECOWAS. What is ECOWAS' position on this, what do you call it, war? Can you tell me, or is it Akufo-Addo's position we are going to take? Hello?
Well, listen, Kofi.
Akufo-Addo is no more even the chairman of ECOWAS anymore. Another person has taken over. It's been given to the president of Guinea-Bissau. What is the president of the ECOWAS Commission, who is different from the chairman of the ECOWAS? What is he saying? The man is just warming up to even take up office from the Gambia.
ECOWAS did condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Well, now I'm happy you said ECOWAS condemned what do you call it, Ukrainian invasion. Why? Because the president of Ghana gave a statement on that. Did they do it on behalf of Ghana, or it was directly from the ECOWAS official?
Not the even if he was the chairperson, he's not speaking in his own capacity, Kofi.
Yes, if he's a chairperson, right? We need to understand the chairperson is like a ceremonial position. He's not supposed to be speaking. He's not even supposed to be speaking. Right? The one to speak is the president of the commission. That is the one that speaks for the ECOWAS, not the chairman. Occasionally, like the Queen of England, is it the Prime Minister who is talking or the Queen is the one talking? That is how it is. Queen may say one thing or the other, most time not call it political. Is that not true? The one that you see in the middle of every dirty thing is the Prime Minister. That is how it's supposed to be, and that's how the EU works. In our case, Macky Sall from West Africa is in, what's the name, Russia. Then we have now been told that the president of Ghana is sitting there condemning it. So where are we? Both from West Africa. Which one is which? Which one do you take? One condemn it. His own brother is down there having a handshake, and so the two are conflicting themselves. Now,
I hear what you say, but in regards to the ECOWAS's condemnation of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it was a statement that was released, not necessarily somebody coming out.
No, so nobody take credit or is associated with the statement. It was just a release. So nobody can say that these are the summit that was had. This is the decision, and there was serious thought and exchange, because you can't have 15 people to agree on the same thing. There will be division. You should be able to have a discussion, a dialogue, and the consensus will be formed, and that will be released. So if you have Macky Sall in Russia, why the one in Ghana?
Kofi, the line has dropped. Please do call back. I do want to hear your take. I think I kind of get Kofi, where Kofi is coming from. I get a gist of what he's trying to say, but Kofi, do come back and let's continue the discussion. Let me read a few messages. This is from James. James is saying, Macron ought to mind his own business. How can he come to the soil of Africa to utter such nonsense? This is not colonial times. This is 2021. Another message here, but the person did not leave their name. The president said Macron should stay in his lane. Hopefully we've got Kofi back. Kofi?
Yes. You see, remember I was saying that the two of them will all be sitting where ECOWAS decision will be made. Unless Macky Sall is looking at him, finish what you are doing, I'm going to do what I'm doing. Because ECOWAS cannot release a statement. Can you see? If Macky Sall is not from West Africa, assuming it's from southern part of Africa, can you see? And at the same time, he's the president of the what? There is the chairman of the African Union. Then it's okay. These are two different people. These people are both from, it's like the president of Ghana saying something and somebody sitting beside him going to say the same thing, but the opposite way. You give people like Macron the chance to understand that you are totally confused people. To start with, let's now come to Macron. Hello, sir, do I have some time?
Yes, we're listening.
Macron did not sit in France to say what he say you, whether those on the African continent like it or they dislike it. He went onto your land. It's like a lion coming to where the chickens are to say what he want to say. Can he go to Russia and go and do that, or China?
Absolutely not.
Can he go to China? That tells you that this you see, nothing is wrong with these Europeans. What is wrong is the so-called, they say we shouldn't use derogatory language to derogatory behavior, people who are cursed. You see, we have created the problem among ourselves. We've created the mess, total mess. So everybody is now in this game is about who are your allies. It's a game of number in the international community. It's a game of number. So if there are 50 of you and they can get 50 of you to add your voice to what they are saying, then the United Nations, when you even go there, you close your eyes and vote, which is the typical characteristics of these people from the African continent. Look, something is wrong with us. There's something wrong with that, our brain. To be honest with you, listen, we want these people to take us serious. Is that not true?
Yeah.
Good. Is it not the same NATO that was in Libya, like Julius was saying?
Yes.
Libyans did not solve the problem of Libya. It is these Europeans who came and solved it, and American and the NATO collaborators.
Well,
they throw bombs everywhere, destroy everything, and when they finish, they left. And now, do you know why they did that? You see, when this man Gaddafi was there, the oil of Libya was not going like the Nigerian oil. Let us call a spade a spade. Tell me where in the world, apart from Russia and China, where there's oil that these people don't control. Mention one place. In the name of the so-called international community. So they have become the international community, for God's sake. They are the international community. Even when we choose to be dumb, you understand? We are dumb. Everybody know we are dumb. We choose the Africa continent. Let's be dumb. Even being dumb, we are told we are dumb. We should speak because they want us to speak. The farmer jumped, the dog back. When are we going to free ourselves from these people? Is it a case? If you say Ukrainians are independent, isn't it? Remember, they were part of the Soviet Union. You know that?
Yeah.
They were all in the Soviet Union, like Ghana was part of the British colony. When we had independence and we started getting close to the Russians, what did they do to Kwame Nkrumah?
Overthrew Kwame Nkrumah.
Abba. I mean, because we are supposed to be in the Commonwealth. We shouldn't talk to the communists. We shouldn't talk to the
This is
socialists.
what I was asking Julius, and it would be good to hear your take on this. I mean, I was saying that, look, the Cold War is over. The ideological war is over. Soviet Union is no more. But Russia is still there. Russia now has invaded Ukraine. Russia is supported by China. China supports Russia. And now it looks as if they're going to the continent to gain influence. And I'm wondering if this is what we're experiencing right now in the 21st century.
The Cold War is not gone, my brother. Why do you have children with flies on their nose and they tell you it's a global warming and you believe it? Before the global warming, it was there. Donkeys, Julius or so forth, they say even donkeys are better than human beings on that land. They choose what they do. This is exactly what they were doing before even the colonization. And then the colonization and the slave is the same. Nothing has changed you. The only difference is that the world is a bit awakened. Technology is available. Can you see? And more people are having access to medical care and education. Can you see? The states are clearer now than colonies. Can you see? We are not called colonies, but to be honest with you, a lot of you will look at it and say, Godisberg is still there in Ghana. To be honest with you, the story is the same. The generations are just different.
All right, Kofi, we're going to end it here for time's sake, Kofi.
Yes, listen to Malema talking about this Russia thing. You laugh and fall down.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kofi Ali. Thank you for calling this morning. Kofi Ali is, I think he's changed the position, Kofi, and please correct me if I'm wrong. ECOWAS Citizens Rights Advocate, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, let's look at other stories quickly before we bring the show to a close. Senegalese voted this Sunday to elect the country's deputies. These elections stand as a decisive test for opposition parties trying to tackle the ruling party's influence ahead of the presidential election in 2024. Let's take a quick listen.
Senegalese voted this Sunday to elect the country's deputies. These elections stand as a decisive test for opposition parties trying to tackle the ruling party's influence ahead of the presidential elections in 2024. Many fear President Macky Sall may seek a third term. It's the destiny of our people that is at stake today with these legislative elections. It's very important people must vote. Today's vote is crucial. We want to have a dynamic assembly, an assembly that represents and assists the people, an assembly close to the people. The Senegalese people really need this. About 7 million voters were called to elect the 165 deputies in their National Assembly. The political atmosphere is tense in the Western African country, even more so since the list of the opponent, Ousmane Sonko, was rejected for this vote. During protests.
All right, now let's look at other stories as well. As I mentioned earlier, this story, I actually stopped myself from watching the video. Now, the death of a migrant who was attacked in broad daylight in central Italy has sparked outrage. The assault on a Nigerian street trader by another man in Civitana Marsh Town Center was captured on video on Friday. The recording reportedly made by onlookers without any attempt to intervene, shows the victim being held to the ground by a white man. A 32-year-old Italian has been arrested on suspicion of murder and robbery. The video of the attack, which had been widely circulated on Italian news, websites, and social media, has shocked the community, with many highlighting the indifference of witnesses. But the circumstances of the incident are unclear. And I mean, look, when I saw the video, I couldn't watch the video, to be honest with you. I couldn't watch it. So been reading stories or publication about this particular video. And what's interesting was that the quote, or should I say the statement from the leader, the right wing, who's a right winger. Okay, so the right wing leader, Matteo Salvini, expressed outrage over the death, saying that security has no color and needs to return to be a right. The attack was condemned by Italian politicians. Enrico Letta, the leader of the left-wing Democratic Party, okay, said what happened was dismaying, unheard of ferocity, widespread indifference. There can be no justification, he wrote in a tweet. And also the right-wing leader, Matteo Salvini, also expressed his thoughts about the situation. And what I find interesting is Salvini's statement, because he has been an advocate against refugees or migrants or immigrants crossing the Mediterranean into Italy. And it's just, it just goes to show, again, the hypocrisy. And when the hate or the narrative, which propagates the fact that people come in from, other countries or war-torn or fleeing, trying to seek refuge in Italy, to be subject to, being treated less than human beings. And this is what will happen. I mean, look, I'm sure more details will come out. And the issue of immigrants, a few weeks ago, we saw how immigrants were being treated, people trying to cross the border of Morocco into Spain were being treated. And this is the same guy, Matteo Salvini, the same guy who was strongly opposing immigrants landing on the shores of Italy, actually turning boats back, to the point where Italy actually paid militant groups in Libya to stop migrants from crossing the Mediterranean Sea. Then all of a sudden, what did he say? Security has no color and needs to return to being a right. Security has no color. What has color got to do with this? If this was in the agenda propagated by this man and his followers in Italy, and the likes of Nigel Farage in this country, and the Conservative Party, the likes of Priti Patel. And this is what actually gets my blood boiling, because it makes my blood boil, because it's just pure hatred. And then when things go south or things turn left, then all of a sudden these politicians will come out in their numbers to try to show face, and just this is just pure formality, nothing more than just words with no actions. And this is what will happen. I know that people wanted to talk about the issue on Ghana. Unfortunately, we couldn't go to that particular story, surcharging for SIM card registration. If we're not able to do it today, maybe we'll do it again tomorrow, okay? Because this story will not go anywhere. Okay, let me take a few messages on this. Jones, thank you for bringing this particular story up. The surcharge for SIM card registration is totally ridiculous. When will this particular government stop bringing in taxes, collecting taxes? This is ridiculous. Look at the current climate in Ghana as we speak right now. And now they're charging people for registering their SIM card. 2024 is coming and we're waiting. Okay. Elizabeth is saying President Macron needs to keep quiet. Whether Africans want to condemn or support the war in Ukraine is their right. No one should be pushed or forced to support Western ideologies. I'll leave the comments here, but the conversation continues on our Facebook page. Do share whilst you're on there. You can follow us across all social media platforms, all right? And our handle is at GN Radio UK. We're done for another day, okay? Today is Monday. It's exactly, the time is approaching 10 o'clock, 1st of August. So happy new month. Whatever it is that you find yourself doing today, I wish you the best and look after yourself. And let's meet again here tomorrow, same time, same place, okay? From 8 a.m. It's goodbye. Enjoy the rest of your day.